Hello students, welcome to the lecture 3 of chapter 1. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about nature of management and levels of management. But before we begin, let's have a quick recapitulation of lecture 2. What did we discuss in lecture 2? We discussed about the objectives of management and importance of management, right? Now, the first topic that we'll be covering here is about the nature of management. See, according to many managers, many authors, there is a confusion regarding the nature of management. Nature of management in the sense that can we say management to be an art, or whether management is a science, or is management a profession? Okay, so different authors, different managers, they have different viewpoint regarding the nature of management. Some think it to be science because there are principles there. Some think management to be an art because creativity is required, personal skills are required. Okay, and some authors have a viewpoint that management is a thing that is going on the path of profession. It is not exactly a profession now, but in some time to come, it will definitely become a profession. So, to understand whether management is a science or an art or a profession, we must compare. Compare what? Compare the feature of science, compare the features of arts, and compare the features of profession with the features of management. Okay, so we will compare both of them and we will derive a conclusion. Right, so this is how we are going to proceed for this topic. I am repeating. For this topic, what are we going to do? First, we will understand the features of arts, for example, and then we'll compare it with the features of management. Then, second part, we will understand the features of science and then we will compare it with the features of management. Same for profession. And after doing this, we will derive solid conclusions that whether management is a science or management is an art, and so on and so on. Clear? So I think we should begin. The first comparison that we'll be doing is checking whether management is an art or not. Okay? See, management as an art. First, let us understand the meaning of art. See, art refers to any systematic body of knowledge which requires skills, creativity, and practice. Okay, so what is arts? Arts is a systematic body of knowledge. Why systematic body of knowledge? That will be covering in the features. Okay, so just for the time being, understand that what is arts? Arts is a systematic body of knowledge which requires creativity, skills, practice. Okay. Now, features of arts are as follows. First feature, as I already said you, existence of theoretical knowledge or systematic body of knowledge. Both the headings are similar, so anyway you can put it. In every art, now understand where in every art, art means dance is a type of art, singing is an art, painting is an art, isn't it? So if we consider these art forms, there are proper study materials available in order to acquire the theoretical knowledge for these arts. Right? For example, for dances, you have proper books available, you have a proper study material available regarding the different forms of dancing, the different types of dances are there. Similarly, if you take the example of singing, you will know that what is sur, what is tal, what is mukhada, antara, so and so on. Such and such things are there. The point to be understood over here is that whatever type of arts is there, they all have a systematic body of knowledge. They all consists proper theoretical knowledge. That means availability or existence of theoretical knowledge is there in any form of art. Clear? This is the first point. Let's see what's written here. In every art, systematic and organized study materials are available. And why are they available? Because or so that we can acquire the theoretical knowledge. Right? Now let's move to point number 2. Point number 2 says personalized application. What do we mean by personalized application? See, again, in any type of art, whether be dancing or whether be singing, only understanding the theory and gaining their theoretical knowledge is not enough. Every artist, dancer, or be a singer, or be a painter, they all have their different personal skills and they all apply it in their own personalized way. Example, again, I'll help you with an example. Like, see, whenever we are learning singing, all the students take the lessons from their gurus. They understand how many forms of surs are there, how many rags are there. But notice one thing, while applying it, do all of them follow the same way? No. All the musicians apply the knowledge that they have gained in a different way, isn't it? That is the meaning of personalized application. Understood? See what's written here. The basic use of knowledge differs from person to person. One person, second person, third person. They all can have the same theoretical knowledge, but the thing they will differ is in its application. That is why art is a personalized concept. Clear? Now let's move to the third feature of art. What is the third feature of art saying? It says it is based on practice and creativity. Definitely. See, arts is what? Arts is actually getting knowledge or gaining the theoretical knowledge, and then we can apply it on our personal level, on our personal scale. According to us, we can use our skills and we can apply it, right? But the thing that is important over here is that every artist requires to have a regular practice. Without regular practice, he cannot excel in this field. Now let us compare these features of arts to the features of management. We have already discussed about the features of management in our lecture 1, right? So I have written them in very short over here so that it will be easy for us to compare. See what's written. In management, huge literature and books are available. Okay. I think this point is matching with the first point of arts, isn't it? Arts also said that they have existence of theoretical knowledge. And over here in management also we are understanding that huge volume of literature books are available on different aspects of management. So the first feature of art is matching with the feature of management, right? Let's check the next line. Every manager has its own unique style of managing things and people. Okay, so this is something like the personalized application, right? One manager can apply the managerial concepts in a different way. Another manager will apply the same management concept, same management principles, maybe in a much more creative way, in a much more different way. So over here, that means in management also we get to see that there is some kind of personalized application of the knowledge, of the managerial concepts, of the managerial theories, of the managerial principles, right? Agreed? Okay, so that means the second point of features is also of second features of arts is also matching with the features of management. Now let's check about the next line. He uses his creativity in applying the management techniques and his skills improve with a regular application. So this point is also matching with the point of features of arts. What is this point saying? This point says that every manager uses his creativity, uses his skill to improve the regular application. Whatever is happening These managers, they use their creativity, they use their skills, and they make things happen, right? So after comparing all the features of arts with the features of management, what do we conclude? Think, what did we conclude? Is it matching? Can management called to be an art? Yes, of course management can be called as an art, right? Because all the features of art are present in the features of management, and therefore it is called as an art. Now let us start our discussion for the second nature, that is management as a science. Why is management called as a science, that we are supposed to discuss here? But before that, let us understand the definition of science. What is science? Science is a systematized body of knowledge which has certain general truths, and these truths can be tested. Tested means these can be verified anytime and anywhere. Very simple. Okay. Now let us come down to the features of science. What are the features of science? The first one says science is a systematized body of knowledge. Why it is a systematized body of knowledge? Because it has a huge lots of collections of theories, of principles, of certain concepts which are based on principles and experiments. Clear? It is a systematized body of knowledge. Okay. Second point, principles that science is having, that is based on what? That is based on experiments and observations. Okay. That means whatever collection the science is having as its theories, as its principles, okay, those are actually based on experimentation. What does that mean? It means that in order to form any kind of theories or any kind of principles, firstly, an experiment is conducted. Okay? Experiment is being conducted. Then, after certain intervals, observations are taken. After taking down the observations, all the data are analyzed and then a conclusion is derived as a formation of a principle. Clear? Okay. So, if we combine point number 1 and point number 2, they both are more or less interrelated. How? Point number 1 says it is a body of knowledge. And how is that body of knowledge prepared? That body of knowledge is actually prepared through repeated experiments and observations. Clear? Now, the third feature of science. The third feature of science is universal validity. Now, why universal validity? Because these scientific principles, these scientific theories, they have universal application. They can be applied anywhere around the earth. It's not that if I test in India, then the gravity theory will be proved to be correct, and if I test somewhere else, it will be proven to be wrong. Is it like that? No. That is why we conclude that these scientific principles, they have a universal validity. Okay? They can be applied anywhere and they have a universal application. Clear? Now let's compare it with the features of management. See, management has a systematic body of knowledge, right? And we know that science also has a systematic body of knowledge. So this point clearly matches and we agree to this. Next, it says that the management principles are also developed over a period of time, okay, based on repeated experiments and observations, which are universally applicable. But, now here comes the catch. The catch is that they have to be modified according to the given situation. Understood? What is this point saying? This point is also saying initially that whatever management principles or whatever management theories that we have, that is based on experiments only, that is based on observations also. Same like science. But the difference over here is that they do not have a universal applicability. Because they have to be modified according to the given situation, or because of the presence of human beings. See, understand one thing. Management is such a process where we cannot work without the involvement of individuals. We need human resources, we need managers. Okay, so whenever we have involvement of factors like human beings, human resources, their behavior, it cannot be predicted. You cannot predict that if I apply principle A to a person, he will react in the same way or he will behave in the same way as person B did. Okay, so this feature of science is partially present in management. We cannot fully say that it has a universal application, in the sense that whatever we apply, it will always give same results. This you will not see in management. Okay, in science you can see this, but in case of management, just because of the factor that we are dealing with human resources, we are dealing with individuals, they all have different behavior. They behave in a different manner. Their behavior cannot be predicted. The most important thing, you cannot predict their behavior. And as their behavior is unpredictable, we cannot give the guarantee that whatever principles we are applying on a particular person, they will behave in the same way as the others do, right? So because of this reason, principle of management is not exact as the principle of pure science, and because of it, what it is called as a inexact science or as a social science, right? Okay. Oh, one line is there. See, the prominence of human factor in management makes it as a social science. Understood? So this change is just because of the existence of human factor. The moment human factor comes it, we cannot say it to be valid or to be applicable everywhere, giving the same results, just as science. Clear? Okay. Now let's move down to the third nature that we are supposed to compare, and it says management as a profession. Now what is a profession that we need to understand? See, what is the definition saying? Management is a occupation. Specialized skills and knowledge are required, and entry is restricted. So I have broken up the definition of management into three parts. What is the first part saying? Occupation. It is an occupation. There is a requirement of specialized skill. There is a requirement of specialized knowledge. Plus, the entry is restricted. Any person cannot enter into a profession so easily. Why is it? We will be understanding this in the features. So let's start with the features. Main features of profession are as follows. Point number 1. Well-defined body of knowledge. As art, as science, as management, profession also has a well-defined structural knowledge, structural concepts, structural principles available with it. Okay? Next point. Restricted entry. Now why is the point saying restricted entry? See, in every in every profession, there is actually examination that you have to pass, right? Then only you can get into that profession. For example, see what is written in this. It's written MBBS degree required for being a doctor, right? Isn't it? Any person can become a doctor? No, there is a barrier, there is a obstruction, that you have to pass the MBBS and then only you can become a doctor. Okay, so this feature is present in profession, that entry is not open to all. You have to pass certain examinations and then only you can get entry into any kinds of profession. Okay, let's move down to the third point. The third point says professional associations. Now what is this professional associations? See, understand. Over here we are discussing about the different professions. right? Now these professions are actually looked onto by some associations. Associations like, again, example, chartered accountancy. That's a profession, very common. You all have must heard this. Another term, ICAI. This also you must have heard. Now what is this stands for? It stands for Institutes of Chartered Accountants of India. Isn't it? Now what is this institute for? This institute actually looks after, or we can say it governs, the activities of all the chartered accountants. Plus all the chartered accountants, they have to be a member of ICAI, isn't it? I think you must have heard this, that there is a membership number given to every CA, right? So what does that mean? It means that special associations or professional associations are available for guiding or for looking after these professions. Okay, one example is given in the book of ICAI. Another example is about the lawyers. Okay, lawyers also have a professional association, that is the Bar Council of India. Okay, so similar way, these different kinds of professions, they have a professional association on top of that, with whom they have to become members. Plus these associations, they look onto the activities of the profession. Okay, see, all the professions are affiliated to a professional associations which regulates entry and frame codes of conduct. Codes of conduct means how are they supposed to behave, what are their working norms, what are their working conditions. That is told to these professionals by these associations or institutes. Clear? Now let's move to the next feature. The next feature says ethical code of conduct. Just now we have discussed this. Ethical code of conduct means these professions, as they are a part of these institute or these associations, they have to follow certain restrictions. They have to follow certain behavior pattern. Okay, and who gives this behavior pattern or who allots this code of conduct? This is allotted by that professional association whose members are these professionals. Like lawyers, they are under the Bar Council of India. They are a member of Bar Council of India, and this Bar Council of India will only regulate, will only give them their code of conduct, that you are supposed to do this things. You are supposed to behave in such and such manner, right? That is the meaning of ethical code of conduct. Clear? And the last feature says service motive. All the professions, they are mainly established to provide service to their clients. Clear? So these were the 5 features of profession that we have already learned. Now let us compare it with the features of management and check that whether they are applicable in management as well or not. So what is the first point or first line saying? Management has a well-defined body of knowledge. Profession also has a well-defined body of knowledge. See, first point we have done. And management also has a well-defined body of knowledge. So first point is matching. Good. Then it says management has no restriction on its entry. Oh, but in profession we have a restriction. So is this point matching? No. This point is not matching with the features of profession. Profession has a restricted entry. On the other hand, managers, they do not have any restriction on their entry. Clear? Next one. Next one says registration in professional association is not compulsory in management. Oh, again this feature is also not matching. Why? Because just we have learned that in professions there are professional associations available. Okay, and they have to become a member. That means registration is compulsory in profession, but registration is not compulsory in management. Okay, Don't confuse between that point that professional association is there or not. Professional association is there both in management, both and in profession. But the thing of difference over here is the registration. Registration is not compulsory here. But registration is compulsory where? Registration is compulsory in the professions, right? Along with it, what we get to learn, we also get to learn over here that there is no compulsion to abide by the ethical codes also. Okay, in case of professions, what did we learn? We learned that some codes are given by the professional associations, but over here in management there is no such compulsion to abide by the ethical codes also. Okay. Next line says management works with the profit motive as well as service motive. But in profession, what have we learned? We learned that profession only works with the service motive. So here is also a difference. Now, due to these differences, we conclude that management is not a full-fledged profession. But very soon, it can be recognized as a full-fledged profession. Maybe someday in future, but present, it is not a profession. Clear? Okay. Now let's move to the next topic. Next topic that we have to cover is about the levels of management. The giving of necessary authority, the giving of necessary responsibility in an organization actually creates the chain of authority, and this chain is only divided into 3 levels. As you all can see in front of you, there's a triangle depicting the 3 levels of management. The first one is the top level, second one is the middle level, and the third one is the lower level, or we can call it as the supervisory level also. Okay. Levels of management. Levels of management means the different categories of managers from the lowest to highest basis of their relative responsibilities, authorities and status. Okay. Now what we'll be learning over here is the different levels, which level has what designations and what are the specific functions of each level of management. This is our main concept that we are going to learn here. The first one being the top level management. Let us see what are the designations available in the top level management. Chairperson, CEO, Chief Operating Officer, or you can say to be board of directors, managing directors, president, vice president. So these different designations actually form a part of the top level management. Okay. Now what are the functions of the top level management? See, their chief task is to integrate and coordinate the various activities of the business. Now whatever activities are going inside any organization, it is the function of the top level management to integrate it and to maintain coordination among them. Okay. Next point is framing of policies. Any new policy, any new plan that has to be framed by the organization is actually done by the top level management. Okay. Next you can see formulating organizational goals or strategies. Same thing, any kind of organizational goals, fixing up of targets, determining the objectives of the enterprise. Okay, any such activities or any such work which needs or which requires framing, which requires long as well as short term objectives, that is actually done by the top level management. Now let's come to the second level, and that level is called as the middle level management. See the designations. It consists of the divisional or departmental heads, plant superintendents and operation managers. Okay. What do we mean by the divisional or departmental heads? See, understand, whenever there is an organization operating, there are different departments in the organization. Like you may have a production department, you may have a sales department, you can have a marketing department. So, the respective heads of these departments actually are called as the departmental heads. Okay? And what are the functions of these middle level management? Point number 1, to interpret the policies of the top level management. That means whatever policies are formed by the top level managers, it is the work of the middle level management to explain it to the lower level management. Okay? Next one, to coordinate all the activities of their department, specifically because we are talking here about the departmental heads, so they will coordinate all the activities of their particular department related to organizing the resources, organizing any other coordination which is required. So that is done by the middle level management. Next one, ensure availability of necessary personnel. Now personnel over here refers to the human resources or the staffs who are working in those organizations, right? So what is the work of these middle level people? They have to ensure availability of necessary personnel. That means they have to find the right person suited for their jobs and they have to select them, appoint them. Okay? And what after selecting and after appointing, what are they going to do? They will assign duties and responsibilities to them. Okay, assigning of duties and responsibilities will be done by this middle level management. There are some other works like motivating the persons, cooperating with the other departments. Okay, so these are the secondary functions performed by the middle level management. I hope this would be clear to you. The last level of management, as we can see, is the lower level or supervisory level. Now one thing you all should note it down over here, that the lower level supervisory level has one more name, and that is called as the operational level. Okay, so that means whenever we are talking about the last level or the lowest level, we can call it as supervisory level also, we can call it as operational level also. Now let's have a look on to the designations that are here. It consists of foremen, supervisors, etc. Foremen, supervisors, you can also add sub-department executives, you can also add clerks over here. The clerks who work in the organization, they are also a part of the lower level management. Okay, now what is their work? See, as they are at the lowest level, they have very limited power with them, they have very limited authorities with them. Okay, their main work is that to collect the information from the upper level management and pass on the instruction to the workers, and in case there are any grievances of the workers, they can report it to the middle level management. Very simple. Also, one more point is there, that this lower people from the lower level management, they have a responsibility of maintaining discipline among the workers. Why do you think they are only responsible? Because as they are at the lowest part of the management, they are more or less closer to the workers than the middle level management and than the top level management, isn't it? So whatever work or whatever management has to be done in relation to the workers of the organization, it is mainly done by the lower level management. Okay, let's have a look onto the functions. The main task is to ensure actual implementation of the policies as per the directions. Means whatever directions are provided by the middle level management to them, they have to ensure that those policies, those orders are properly implemented and properly executed. Next one says brings workers' grievances. Okay, this I have already discussed, that in case there are any grievances, any problem related to the subordinates, related to the workers working, they can report it to the middle level management. Okay. Next one, maintain discipline among the workers. Discipline is actually very important in any organization. Why? Because if there will be discipline, all the work, all the activities will be in proper coordination. And if there is coordination, there will be good working conditions, right? The work environment would be suitable. Everyone would be feeling to work there, isn't it? Also, many more additional points come to it, that in case or if there is maintenance of discipline in the organization, the workers will be motivated to work. Okay, there is no lagging behind. So boosting morale of the employees or boosting morale of the workers can also be a part of the function of the lower level management, right? Also, one more point you can add it over here, that they look after the safety of the workers. That is most important, because as I have said, they are the ones closely connected to the workers. So anything in relation to the safety of the workers have to be looked after by the lower level management only. Okay, so that was all. Acha, before I finish this, I forgot to discuss with you the figure. I said you that there is a top level management, there is middle level management, there is lower level management. Well and fine. Function of top level management, framing plans and policies. Functions of middle level management, interpretation of the plans. And what is the lower level management work? They have to execute the plans or convey it to the lower workers. Okay, now can you all see two arrows here? These two arrows, one arrow is going upwards and one arrow is moving downwards. And here is written, downwards arrow is named as authority and the upward arrow is named as responsibility or accountability. Now this thing you have to understand. Why are the arrows facing in this way? See, what do we mean by authority? Authority is actually a power to do something. That is called as authority, the power. So see, the arrow of authority is moving downwards. As it is moving downwards, it is trying to convey that the power decreases as we move down the levels of management. The most power is with the top level people. Then as we move down, authority decreases. Middle level management has less power than the top level management. And again, if we move further, lower level management has a less authority than the middle level management. Clear? Authority. Why is the arrow facing downwards? Now understand why is the arrow facing upwards for the responsibility and accountability. Responsibility and accountability means, what do we mean by accountability? Accountability is actually the obligation to be answerable to someone. That means if I don't do a particular work, I have to be reported there. I will report there. I have the obligation to be answerable. Okay, they can question me that why haven't you done this work? So that time I have to answer. So that is accountability accountability. And what about responsibility? Responsibility, we all know, the charge that we get to do a particular work. That is responsibility. Now first understand that why does accountability increases as we move upwards. See, lower level management is looked after by the middle level people. So if lower level management does anything, who will question them? The middle level management will question them, or they will look onto the activities of the lower level management. Are you understanding? So the accountability, we can see that it increases. Lower level is accountable to the middle level. Now, who is the middle level accountable to? The middle level is accountable to the top level. That means all the activities, whatever the activities a middle level does, they have to report it to the top level management. The top level management can question the middle level management that why have you done this, or how are the proceedings going. Understood? So we see that the accountability increases as we move upward. Lower level being accountable to the middle level accountable to the top level. Now by this, don't understand that lower level is not accountable to the top level. That is well understood. Okay. Lower level is also accountable to top level. Now comes about the responsibility. The responsibility increases. Who has the most responsibility? Apply your common sense. Which level will have the most responsibility? Top level management has this. So as we see, the responsibility is highest at the top level. As we move down, it's a little less, and it is the least at the lower level. So to sum up, I would say that as we move down the management level, the authority decreases, the power decreases, right? Point number 2, as we move upwards of the levels of management, the accountability or the answerability, that increases. Okay, we have to be reporting to someone, we have to be accountable to someone. And point number 3, the responsibility also increases as we move from the lower level to the top level. That means the top level has the most of the responsibilities. Clear? So this was what I wanted to discuss with you. So that is all for today. We'll meet you in the next video. Thank you.